You take a photo or a video, have consent of everybody in frame. Easy enough? Yep. There are 2 maps. One is next to the registration booth and one is down near track 1. So you can find where everything is. We are right now in the ballroom where there's coffee there and there. Please drink the coffee. If you have never run an event, you don't know how much that coffee costs. So please drink it. And we have workshops today. They are first come. So if you want to attend them, please get there a little bit before they start. Thank you. Click. The schedule is in Hacker Tracker, and it is also on our website. I already talked about that. And workshops are nothing extra. They're included in your ticket. We have guided adversary emulation, automate CTI workflows with LLMs, adventures in IoT hacking, and ransomware rampage. Lunch is going to be 12:30 to 1:30 here, and that is included in your ticket. Badges, the electronic kind that you solder in the Maker Village, where we have lots of soldering irons, are still available to purchase. If you wanted one and did not purchase it, you will have to purchase it on Eventbrite and then go pick it up. We can't take cash, we can't take cards. Use the interwebs. On the back of your badge, there is a puzzle. If you solve the puzzle, go talk to Chris in Maker Village, and there is a prize. Career Village. If you are a hiring manager, you should talk to Kat. Kat is easy to find. Kat hangs out with Sasha, the flamingo. You can also check the schedule because there's going to be both talks and resume reviews happening throughout the day in the Career Village. So if you want to know when a talk is versus when you can get your resume reviewed, that would be on the schedule. Masks are required unless you are eating, drinking, or you are a speaker who is presenting. And that means like when you are presenting. There will be a survey after the event. I know there's questions, they're annoying. However, it really does help us figure out what people enjoy and what they don't, so we know what to prioritize with our money for each year. So please fill them out. There is also feedback for speakers. I know it's annoying, but as a person who does speaking, it is really nice to know, like, hey, that resonated with me, or hey, like I got the idea, but you know, it could have been a little better if you explained this because I got lost here. That allows people who do a lot of speaking to make sure that they are continually improving, so it is appreciated. And thank you to all of our sponsors who made this possible. Google and Meta, CAI, GuidePoint, Carnegie Mellon and G Research, Adobe, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Meta CTF. The CTF is going to be here after this, and the scoreboard should hopefully be able to be displayed up here. And at 6 o'clock, we'll be announcing first, second, and third prizes. We've got Alyssa Miller, InfoSec Map, Lockpick Extreme. For anyone who didn't see it, there's postcards that you can get crossed off by the sponsors who are here. If you cross off all the sponsors who are here and put your name on the back, there is a whole lockpick set with practice locks and a lockpick poster that you can win in a raffle, and Dev IT jobs. And also, we had some scholarship winners who were able to come here thanks to Sublime Security, DEF CON, Black Hat USA, and Black Girls Hack. And we also have a quiet room. There is no talking in the quiet room, as the name implies. And that was brought to you by Neurodivergent SIG. And they have a cute little cat logo. I think they have stickers in there. Next to their room, we have a whole bunch of arts and crafts. That is the social arts and crafts room. Be as social as you want over there. And then if you want to bring any of those arts and crafts over to the quiet room and do them quietly, you are welcome to do that. The talking and crafting room and the quiet and crafting room. All right, and then these are all of our friends and partners. These are other awesome nonprofits that you should hang out, say hi to, learn things from. Now, if you're coming to DEF CON at the end of Hacker Summer Camp, we're going to be in LVCC West 205 and 206. We'll have a quiet room. We will have discussion groups. We will have tour groups going from the lobby. And we also have a women, gender nonconforming, and non-binary meetup on Friday. This is all in Hacker Tracker. And our August newsletter, if you are interested to be a volunteer, board member, or sponsoring us, sign up for our newsletter. You'll get that. And just to let everybody know, this is going to be the last standalone TDI for a while. So we will only be a sub event at other events foreseeable future. And next up is Heidi Schmoo.
All good? All right. All right, all right, all right. Waiting, waiting. Mr. Potter? Okay. I bring my own tech support everywhere I go. I know. I'll try this again. It was working earlier.
So, unplug you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna bail you out of this.
Go ahead. I want to kill those calendar invites.
Boy, it doesn't want to.
It really doesn't want to, does it? Well, we'll get this going in just a second.
Do some crowd work.
Do some crowd work, he says. Tell a mom joke. I don't know that I actually have any really good mom jokes. Oh, here we go, here we go, here we go. See, I do have jokes, but none of them are appropriate, so we're just not going to go there right now.
I got a new pet this last weekend. Yeah,
Oh, there we go. We are going. There we go. All right. We're up and running. Okay. Yay! I'm used to rolling with the, whatever happens. For those of you that don't know, this is the obligatory Who Am I slide, right? So my name's Heidi. I'm a mom to some pretty amazing kids, and I don't know how many in this room have ever been to this thing called ShmooCon besides all the people up here at the front table who are all my friends. A few of you. If you've been to ShmooCon, there's a thing I ran for 20 years in DC. It's a conference, brought people together in DC, to 2,300 people every year. So most of you, if you come there, you saw my kids grow up on stage, right? So it's probably one of the things I'm proudest of is being a parent. My husband's in the back providing ad hoc tech support to the folks back there to get us up and running here today. But really, the obligatory Who Am I slide, just to let you know what I really am is, or what I consider myself, is I'm kind of basically duct tape in human form, right? I'm kind of slightly frayed, obviously. I'm reasonably useful, and I think I'm pretty good at solving problems with a whole lot of Post-it notes and like Scotch tape and spit, right? It's why I'm good at what I do. Just used to kind of solving problems kind of on the fly. Last year, I gave a talk at a small conference outside of Philly called JohnCon. It's run by a friend of ours named Russ Handorf. And I gave a talk there about words and why words matter. And it's because of that talk that I think I was asked to come and speak here. for like the three of you who were there and saw that talk, you're probably surprised Bruce is running my tech support. So I'll tell you a little funny story about that. In the minutes before I went on stage for that talk, I asked Bruce to review my slides, right? Because, you know, that's what you do. You're kind of like, can you just look at them one more time? I made some changes. Can let me know if they're good. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking over his shoulder as he's looking at my slides. And one by one, I am watching my slides disappear. And I'm looking and I said, Bruce, are you deleting my talk? And he looks up at me and he looks down and he goes, yes, I am. And he had deleted my entire presentation about 2 minutes before I was supposed to go up on stage. So I didn't let him touch my slides today. Thank you, Bruce. But he is back there acting as my ad hoc presenter from the back because we don't have a link between the streaming and what I'm doing up here on stage. So he's clicking at the same time I click. We'll see how this goes. Anyway, so again, the talk that I'm giving today is somewhat inspired by the talk I gave at John, which is that words matter. But today we are expanding on that, and we're going to talk about books and shelves. Bruce and I have a company together. It's called Turngate. It's mostly Bruce's. I just work for him. And at Turngate, we have a concept that we call the well-organized shelf. I don't know. I'm hoping you can kind of read what's on the screen there. But the most important line up there is sort of the start of the third paragraph. Turngate's well-organized shelf is a collection of thoughts, values, and ideas that we use to drive the company, right? We use this metaphor of a shelf to help us set culture and expectations for our employees and for how we want to be as an organization. It's ideals, it's who we are, what our values are, but it isn't about perfection. It's really about intention. So we use those ideas going to set this pace of who we want to be as we move forward as a company. And at Turngate, we label those shelves. So these are our shelves. We have the good company shelf, the good human shelf, the effectiveness and efficiency shelf, security shelf, and the clarity and simplicity shelf. But these shelves don't really mean anything if the books, quote, the books inside don't actually reflect what's on those shelves, right? So just as an example, the good company shelf, one of the books that's on that shelf is this idea that diversity of experiences equals a stronger company, right? Our users, we're building a product, our users come from all kinds of backgrounds and experiences. And therefore, if our employees do the same, we can model behaviors and we can build a product that actually meets the expectations of our customers, right? It also lends voices to our creative processes. So that's one of our good company shelves, or books on the good company shelf. The good human shelf. A couple of books that appear on our good human shelf are the idea that we embrace failure at Turngate. Embracing failure. If we recognize that the times when things don't go well are often an opportunity to learn, improve, and get stronger, that can only serve to make us better as a company, right? Like we don't look down on when things go badly. We just use them as a time to improve upon our processes and make things better in the future. Also on that shelf is kind of one of my favorite phrases. I use this a lot when I work with volunteers, when I work with kids, is my lead with kindness mantra. This is not about being nice, right? Because leading with kindness means a lot of different things. It mostly just means starting with compassion. Sometimes it means being honest. By no means does it mean just being nice, right? But we do lead with kindness at Turngate. One more example from the Turngate shelves is our clarity and simplicity shelf. This one actually kind of harkens back to the talk I gave at John too. It's providing clarity to provide value. It's the idea that taking the time to send core messages or to make sure that core messages and processes are understood goes a long way to mitigating confusion and frustration. It's the idea that words matter, right? So make sure that you are making sense, that you are communicating properly and effectively. So that's Turngate shelves. Let's see. What does Heidi's shelves look like right now? These are some of my shelves. These aren't all of my shelves, but these are maybe what some of my shelves look like currently. I hope we all have a Be a Better Human shelf. Playing very prominently in my life right now is the Figure Your Shit Out at Work shelf, right? I went from kind of doing my own thing for a very long time, working for myself, to now working for my husband, who's made me his COO. And now I run a technical team as part of that at work. Hello, that's not something I've done before. Yeah, that one takes up a lot of space in my brain right now. And then these other shelves that are up there are things that mean a lot to me and are a very, very big part of who I am. But these shelves, they've changed over time. And I think in our metaphorical shelves, because it's a little bit different than like our physical bookshelves, oftentimes at home we display what's important to us or what's fun or, what looks cool or whatever. But in kind of the metaphorical sense in our shelves, what's visible is important, but oftentimes what's not visible is just as meaningful, right? And can tell you even more about yourself, like what's missing from your shelf. And I think in our sense of self, our shelves should kind of always be a reflection of not only who we are, and where we've been, but also where we want to go in the future. So where did our shelves start? Our shelves kind of come pre-built, right? They come from all kinds of influences when you're young. Primarily, it probably starts with your parents, and an extension of that, your family. Then it comes from school, friends, culture, probably religion. These are some of my earliest books. So I want you to think about what started on your shelf when you were young, right? Likely, some of what you were taught early or what you read early, what you ingested early, became very foundational to you, and maybe a lot of it in the end ended up kind of being propaganda, right? In the books that are here, this one's kind of funny to me. I read at a very, very, very incredibly early age. I don't remember learning how to read. So as much as I have like, what is that, Richard Scarry and like the little golden books and whatever, what are those called? The brown ones there, which are like, would predate me. Those are like from the 1800s, but my dad thought that was a good way to teach me how to read, I guess. But because I remember those, but I remember reading them after I learned how to read. The first book I remember reading is The Lost Horizon. And I was like 4. Okay, and I don't know, has anybody read that book? Nobody in this room has read that book. Okay, so that is like a utopian, like the guy crashes the plane in the mountains and he like finds Zen and a whole thing. It's like a total utopian book, right? And it is way above your pay grade as a 4-year-old. And what I remember about this book as a 4-year-old is there's this whole quote about llamas and how like they are pursuing wisdom and future, and how somebody thinks if they're doing that, they're not doing anything at all. But in my 4-year-old brain, I thought they were talking about, the spitting animal llamas. Took me a long time to know that that's not what was happening in that book. Let's see, what else did I read, or what was foundational for me as a kid? Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. A lot of people read that in school. Do they still read that in school today? You don't know. Anybody in here read this? I think it's on the banned book list now, so who knows? You read that book. This was pivotal for me as a kid. I can still remember to this day the poem that starts at, I believe it's chapter, somebody will have to check me on this, I want to say chapter 11. Roll of thunder, hear my cry, over the water by and by, old man coming down the lane, whip in hand to beat me down, but I ain't gonna let him turn me around. Now, I can't claim to know like the story of that complete, like race and culture, but I did experience prejudice as a child, right? And I did know what it was like to be discriminated against for my race and my culture when I was young. And to be frank, I was also discriminated against because people assumed I was another race and culture when I was young. So when I read those words in that book, I was kind of able to borrow that strength, and that grew with me as I matured and became an adult. So that was really super influential for me as a kid. And I read that in school. I want to say elementary school for me. How about this one? Wrinkle in Time. Okay, good. Okay. So Madeline Lingle, I actually got to meet her when I was in middle school. She came to our school as an artist in residence. Actually, I don't think she was even an artist in residence. I think she was just traveling in Alaska. And then to probably use some of her travel expenses as a business expense, she stopped in and did some talks with students. So I got to spend 4 hours with her one day. But, I think if you're even remotely nerdy, you kind of love her books as a child. And she's for me, she was kind of like the OG Tesseract, right? Forget this Marvel crap. That was the OG Tesseract, except it's not, because then when I was older and in college and I read, what was it? The math book, flat line, flat something. That is actually the OG Tesseract, right? Math nerds, anybody? Flatland, thank you. That's the OG Tesseract. I learned that a lot later. Okay, World Magazine. Where's my older folks in here? World Magazine, thank you. They're all up front. See, we're oldie folks up here. World Magazine, I lived in rural Alaska growing up, and my parents, thankfully, we didn't have a lot, but they did spend money on things, books, and magazine subscriptions. You can do it, Heidi. Because I was such a voracious reader, and we lived in really small towns, and I read through the library. So what World Magazine taught me was that, frankly, the world was larger than what I saw around me, right? It allowed me to see far, far further than my front door at a time when I was very, very young. Now, to be fair, I'm also sure it was World Magazine that taught me that I'd probably have the opportunity to live on the moon by the time I was 35. That clearly didn't happen, but that's okay. I'm not actually sure I would have taken, but I don't think I would have done that anyway. But what about books that don't have a title on the spine, right? Like this metaphorical sense of these books, right? Ones that showed up in my formative years, or ones that showed up over time. For me, I'm going to stare at my husband when I say this one. One of the concepts that I grew up with that I had to work hard to change in later in life was the idea that anger equaled goodbye, right? So somewhere along the way, I was taught and I learned that if I got angry or someone got angry at me, that I had to leave. It wasn't that people left me, it's that I had to leave, right? Eventually, through maturity and time and work, I began to understand that wasn't true, and I was able to overcome those feelings, and I was able to introduce techniques into my life that allowed me to work through those feelings. And I also, probably even more importantly, learned that the people who introduced that behavior or showed me that behavior, modeled that behavior, had that behavior as a survival technique for things that had happened in their lives, right? So I guess my question for you right now is, what does your early shelf look like? What were you taught to believe about things like maybe what success looks like? Maybe what does nice mean to you? Or maybe what belief systems you were raised with? And what books are you still carrying now that you don't need to be carrying? So it's not always easy to change, right? One of the easiest evolutions, I think, in our bookshelves is growth without letting go. So we're just adding and stacking on. Okay, so I heard this kind of chatter happening on the front of the room earlier today. But here's a book that a lot of us read as a child. It just had a resurgence, right? Is a movie. So this is both of these books are kind of coming of age books, right? If you're of the female persuasion and experiencing certain things, but they're just on the same theme, just different phases of life, right? So here's a part of my life that's certainly evolved. So Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret was an iconic book back from, I would say, the 70s, 80s. And it was about your young teens and coming of age and things like puberty, hardcore puberty. Of course, now I'm over 50 and I'm experiencing a different kind of puberty, if you will. So that's been fun. How about this one? In my 20s, it was all Zen this, Zen and that. And this was The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I don't know that anybody's actually read this book, but it was kind of making the rounds there for a while. It's about this guy, and he sees this like guru on the top of the gas station. They end up having all these conversations, and it's like this thing. So my idea of self-improvement, which was all about like inner peace, has now evolved into like, no, I just need to learn how to cut a fucking onion, right? Like, or this tomato without hurting myself. So I'm still self-improvement. Now it's much more practical. Like, I need to know how to survive out in the wilderness, kind of practical. Or this. As I've gotten older, I've become much more settled in the idea of my own personal faith, which is that I can have that and it can be very personal. But for me personally, I don't really hold faith with organized religion, and I've become much more comfortable with that idea. Also, that book, the Lamb book, which is the Gospel According to Biff, one of the funniest books I've ever read. If you haven't read it, I laughed out loud so hard reading that at night I woke Bruce up. Super funny, not actually really irreverent at all, but really, really funny. Highly recommend. Not a lot of jokes in this talk, folks. Sorry. It's kind of one of these like serious things going on here. All right, so shelf crisis. Sometimes things happen in life that just kind of take you along for the ride and introduce change to your shelf whether you like it or not, right? Probably some obvious examples up here. Pregnancy, parenting, world events, loss, grief, other milestones, home ownership. That home improvement book, I swear to God, when Bruce and I bought our first house, it was on the cusp of like the internet actually having like truly useful information. And we lived out of that book. Like everything we needed to know, if it wasn't in that book, we didn't know how to do it. That was fundamental to us initially. Now nobody does that anymore, right? You just Google your way to success. You YouTube your way to success. I don't even know that you Google your way. No, you don't even do that anymore. You Reddit your way to success, right? I'm behind the times. All right, this book. This is a kid's book, and it's a part of a series. I can't remember the guy's name, Brad Metzler, I think it is. It's part of a series called Ordinary People Change the World. After the one of the ways that I often combat big feelings and hard emotions is I'll go out and I just try to do something good, or I try to put good out into the world. And in this particular situation, what I did was practically buy this whole entire series and put it on my kids' shelves. Because my idea was, if this is where we're at right now, my kids are going to know that they can do good things. Now, at the time, two of our kids were way above the reading age for this series of books, but I thought they were delightful anyway, so I went out and bought basically every book the guy had written, and I put this in our house. And that was one of my many reactions to what was happening in our country at that time. I'm curious if anybody here can guess what our family's pandemic books were. Leatherworking, that certainly was one of them. Home preserving, everybody can during the pandemic, right? And sourdough, but we already done the sourdough journey, so that was not one of our pandemic books. Anybody else? Well, no, that one, that's just estate planning, so that's okay. That was not in particular one of our pandemic books, but that's a ukulele book. All right, let's go back to that one. So the ukulele book actually was not a pandemic book. The ukulele books, did you see what I did there? I led you right to that. The ukulele book was actually a different journey of mine. I ran ShmooCon with the help of an incredible amount of people who couldn't have done it without them. But for the first about 10 years, you know what I never did? I never stood up here and talked. Not once, not ever. Well, that's not entirely true. I would like stand behind Bruce and like knee him in the back if he said something wrong, or I'd tap him really hard, or I'd shove a piece of paper across the table at him, or I might like kind of mumble into the microphone if I had to. I didn't like talking at all in front of people. I could talk to you down there, no problem. But if you put this in my hand and made me talk in front of people, I couldn't do it. So, and the ShmooCon staff, they knew this. So I can't remember how it came up, but it's probably Noise, one of my really good friends. And she was joking with me one day, and she says, Heidi, I think you should make yourself a goal of playing the ukulele for the ShmooCon staff at some point. And I went, okay, I can do that. I'm going to do that. And so I went out and I got a ukulele and I got some books. And I started to try to learn how to play the ukulele. Now, this does not have a happy ending. I never learned how to play the ukulele. I never played the ukulele for the ShmooCon staff. Now, I do now own like 7 ukuleles, okay? I don't know why, but it was that journey, that kind of idea of setting this goal and now this ongoing joke of being able to play the ukulele for the staff that kind of opened up this door. And I don't even know how that kind of, became that bridge between I'm going to do this thing for the staff, which means I have to talk to them in front of them in the microphone and actually communicate with them, to me getting up on stage and being able to do things like this. But that was the pivot point for me, was this decision that I was going to put this goal in front of myself. Now, Frank, I'm still going to do it. I'm going to do it. Bruce has made me promise I'm going to do it. And here's what I'll tell you, that I also recently bought a harmonica book. I don't know. Maybe I'll play both at the same time. That'll be fun. Oh, we got stuff. And then, I already brought up this, but my point with this one is that sometimes it's not a moment. Like, this isn't a moment, right? This is a process, and it's not an easy one, and it's not one that gets talked about often enough. So, sometimes these shelf crises, it's not a single thing that happens. Sometimes it's like an evolution in and of itself as these events go on. So, just keep that in mind, right? Like, it's not maybe just a trigger event, right? It can be a trigger 10 years, right? All right, so what on your shelves no longer deserves space? We're going to go through a few examples here. But I think the lesson on this slide really is that you really kind of need to stop renting out space on your shelf to outdated stories, right? This goes back to like some of the things I mentioned before. Maybe those metrics of success that you don't agree with, right? Things like that. You need to be asking yourself, does this reflect who I am, who I want to be? Am I doing this out of guilt or habit? Would I recommend this to people I care about, right? Keep in mind, again, we're going to jump back and forth between literal books and metaphorical books, right? But it doesn't really matter because it's kind of all the same, in my opinion. What we read, what we watch, what we ingest shapes how we see the world and how we interact with it, right? And then it starts to show up, and it turns into what we give back to the world in a lot of ways, right? So here's something that I no longer make space for. Okay. So this is the book that shall not be named. Thank you. That I happen to share a name with. So I'm actually pretty fond of this book, right? I like the characters. I'm actually was amazed at the time when it first came out. It actually sort of brought life back to a whole generation of readers. And if you don't know what the book is, just think about it. My last name in this book, you'll figure it out, right? Named my dog after the main character. I mean, this is a whole thing, right? My dog's name was H-A-I-R-Y. Does that help? I don't know. But Yeah, this book, I mean, so again, I loved all the characters. This book it revolutionized a whole generation of readers. It actually brought kids back to books, and I can admire all of those things. But the bottom line, the real bottom line for me in this book, and this is not necessarily even the book, but the author, is that I'm the mama of a trans child, right? And trans rights matter the fuck all to me. And this book no longer has any space in my life. So it's gone, right? No, it no longer has room on my shelf. What about this book? Anybody know this book? This is an old book. Bob might know this book as the oldest person in the room. Sorry, Bob. Do you know this book? Yeah. So this was this book actually like won awards and stuff. It is called, and I'll go ahead and tell you, it's called The Five Chinese Brothers. It's actually based on an old Chinese story. It and on its surface, it's kind of this charming story of these identical brothers who come together and they have teamwork and they're trying to save one brother from the death penalty. Because of a horrible accident that had occurred. I don't know, you think you're reading the story and you're like, it's kind of this charming story of teamwork and family, and then you're kind of like, wow, I'm actually reading this to my kid. But that's not actually the reason why it became kind of fundamentally bad. It's just the depictions in this are actually kind of a little bit racist, right? So not so good there. Yeah, no longer on my shelf. So, yeah, solidly racist. I said that a little tongue in cheek, but also like, since when did writing a story about avoiding the death penalty become a kid's book that you read to 4-year-olds? I don't know. I think the original legend, probably great story, and probably has a moral, but to turn it into a toddler book, I don't know. How about this one? Does anybody know this book? I know I fuzzed all the covers. This is hard. Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Anybody read that? You've read that. I read this book while I was pregnant with our oldest child. So Bruce helped me out 28 years ago. Thank you. I got my kid's age right. This book has a lot of meaning to me. Not really. I mean, the book itself was fine. It was great. It's a kind of a King Arthur, I don't know, fantasy kind of, whatever. But it's important to me because of the when I read it. I was big in my first pregnancy. I was sick all the time and I was in bed, and it just allowed me to kind of escape and, recenter myself during that time. So a couple of years later, I learned that after her death, she was accused of being complicit to the abuse of her own daughter, but not only her own daughter, but other children as well. Now, this is an unconfirmed allegation, right? And so for me, this was actually a book I had like displayed in my home because of what the book meant to me because of when I read it. And ultimately, I had to make a choice. Didn't know for sure, but ultimately the idea of that made it something I no longer wanted to have displayed in my home. So, I removed it from my shelves. So what are some kind of like maybe not physical book examples of this? Here's a really easy one for me. And you may laugh at this one, I don't know, or at least slightly chuckle under your breath. How about Chick-fil-A waffle fries? Like, I freaking love Chick-fil-A waffle fries. But you know what I haven't eaten in a really long time? Chick-fil-A waffle fries, right? I just don't believe in supporting their business. Now, will I eat them? I have eaten them probably twice in maybe, 15 years, because it's been like the only thing on the road and I'm on a long road trip, right? Like I will not starve myself, okay? I'm gonna be a little honest about that. But for me, that was an easy one because it was easy. Like there wasn't a whole lot of self-sacrifice in giving that one up, right? So I'm not like telling you that this was like, look at this hardship. It wasn't hard. Wendy's was across the street, right? But that's one I gave up. But here's a slightly harder one. Here's a concept I had to give up in my life. I, for many, many years, was a chronic headache and chronic migraine sufferer. I lived with chronic pain. I still live with chronic pain. But I never acknowledged that to myself for probably 15 or 20 years. Because I lived with the idea that my pain didn't matter because other people felt pain that was worse, right? Other people suffered things that was so much beyond what I was dealing with that my pain didn't matter. So I would just deal with it, and oftentimes didn't actually seek real treatment for many, many years beyond like the onset when I was very young. When I finally began to accept and even use the words chronic pain was when I was able to kind of allow myself to go seek treatment, to do better things for myself, and actually finally become moderately pain-free for the first time in years, a couple of years ago. So that was phenomenal for me. But I had to accept that my pain mattered, right? So that was a concept that I had to let go of, right? And it was a tough one for me because I never thought that I was suffering as much as other people. And I mean, and I wasn't necessarily so, but my pain was still my pain and I needed to deal with it. Now, I just want to say real quick that none of this, especially this, is really for me about like, cancel culture. It's not about that. It's about getting rid of what's not working for you in your right now. That's what I'm talking about, right? And it's not even about erasing my experiences with any of this, right? I will always have the memories of reading that book and being pregnant, or reading this terrible book to my children, because I loved reading to my kids, right? So it's not about that. Like, you have to remember where you came from to know where you're going, right? All right. So what does deserve space on your shelf? What beliefs or ideas do you want to grow, and what voices do you want to amplify, right? For me, personally, this can often look like learning from our past. This book is the story of Emmett Till, 14-year-old boy who was lynched. This book, I kind of have this weird thing with books sometimes. When Bruce and I got engaged, we went to, this is going to be like a happy story to a sad story. I don't know. We're just going to go with it. We went, again, the internet didn't really have all the useful stuff on it quite yet. So we went to the bookstore to get books about weddings so we could plan our wedding. And we randomly picked a book off the shelf. And this particular wedding book had like case studies in it, like case studies of weddings, examples of weddings, and all the chapters were named by couples. And I randomly picked this book off the shelf and randomly open it up, and I open it up to the Bruce and Heidi chapter, as if the universe wasn't hitting me over the head that I was supposed to marry my husband. This particular book I bought, sat at home for a little while, and then I picked it up and started to read it, and I realized I had started to read it on the anniversary of Emmett Till's death. So that was kind of cool, in a not cool kind of way, but it was an interesting read. So learning from our past is kind of a big resonating thing that I do in my life. But I also like to look forward. This book was a gift from a good friend of mine who read it and said that he saw a lot of things in this book that reminded him of me. And so he wanted me to read it. Now, I read the book, and then I actually joined an online book club with the author, so I got to talk to the author a fair bit. And then got to meet a lot of other people who also liked this book, and I've since gifted this book to a lot of people. So it's just kind of a new way of kind of putting your life in perspective. It's not a hard read. It's just, I don't know, it's just a fun, easy book that it does give you a little bit of homework along the way, but nothing hard, kind of like it. But what was fun for me about this book is that I got to do it with my friend, right? It was something we got to do together. And then kind of going back to that shelf I talked about at the very beginning, the figure your shit out at work shelf. This is just an example I threw up here. How many people have read this book? Okay, you should read this book, right? If you're like remotely close to DevOps or IT or anything, it's a novel. Like this is a novel, right? It's funny. You can also do it on audiobook. Actually, it's kind of fun to do that in the car. But it is very adjacent to the type of work that we do. I wouldn't even say it's not even the type of work we do, but it's like the type of work that our customers might do, or just kind of developing in general, writing code, whatever. It was fun. It was fun to listen to, fun to read. I've done it twice now. Just kind of add some fun perspective. So again, it's just, I have many, 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 many more books on that particular shelf, but this one's kind of fun. So making room for new voices, new tools, challenging perspectives, things that bring joy. Knife, that's Solomon Rushdie. He got stabbed when he was walking off the stage or at Chautauqua Institute. He was talking at Chautauqua Institute, and this is about how he recovered, and that whole process for him. The Art of the Gathering was a gift from Bob down here at the front. One of the things I like to do is bring people together, and this book has so many great lessons about bringing people together, and unique ways that you can do that. Traveling, I am jazz. Putting books on my kids' shelves when they're young that represent underrepresented communities, and showcasing to kids that everybody, is absolutely unique and normal at the same time. So things that, challenging perspectives, things that bring joy, things that bring you a better sense of self and help you to define who you are, and maybe also what your boundaries are. As a part of that, we also have what I kind of call the sharing shelf. I tried to say that and practice that before I got on stage because it came out not well. It's like a tongue twister. We all have things that we borrow and take from each other all the time, right? I'm calling this like the burnout slide, right? These are things like perspective holding, like let me help you see this from the other side. Oh, Bruce, I got ahead of myself. You can ignore those. I didn't mean to click on those slides yet. Sorry. Emotional regulation. It's your turn to freak out. So I'm going to stay calm right now. While you freak out, I'll stay calm. And then we'll take turns, right? Like you get to be calm. We do this for each other, right? Or trust capital. People borrowing against your reputation. The name drop, right? This happens a lot. So what do I lend out? I mean, I lend out things on this list all the time. I also I borrow this stuff from people. But okay, now we can do the first one, Bruce, knowledge share. Knowledge share. One of the things I do a lot is I talk to people about conferences, right? I meet on average at least once a month with people who are either running a conference, starting a new conference, and I lend them everything I know. They have a question, I'll answer it. You want to start a conference? I'll tell you everything I know, every mistake I've made. You can take it or leave it, lump it, whatever. But if you have a question, I'll give you my honest answer. And I'll help you make any assessment over any situation you've got. And I have no ego in your game, right? That's something I do. That book, the Phoenix Project book, after I read that again for the second time, I sent it to everybody in my company. And uniquely, it had an impact at least on one of our employees this time, and we just went through a round of setting up whole new processes at our company, in part because they read that book. And that's what knowledge share is about, right? It's hoping and changing and sharing knowledge. Okay, now we're on memory management. We all do this one, right? And Bruce and I do this all the time with our kids. Like, did you remember to set up that appointment? Oh my gosh, one of us has to take them to rehearsal, But we do this with our friends too, right? All the time. And I will tell you that I am not as good at this as Bruce is. Everybody thinks I'm the better one at this, right? The only reason I am better is because I use my calendar. He's not even looking up. There's another one on here I want to talk about, which is the power of decision. And I call this one decision fatigue. My example here is maybe a little silly, but there's a couple of my girlfriends and I will traditionally take a trip after ShmooCon has ended every year. Obviously, we're not going to do that anymore. Rest in peace, ShmooCon. But and we're always really excited to go. It's a ton of fun. But I will say to them, we can go. I can't make any decisions about this trip. I'm exhausted. You just tell me when to show up. You just can get me. Just tell me what kind of clothes to pack, and we'll go and we'll have fun. Once we're on the trip, I'll help you decide where we're going to eat dinner. But I can't have any. There's no decisioning for me in any of the rest of it. These two up here will tell you sometimes when we're out and about at events like this, there's so much going on, or maybe I've got, we'll take turns. If we have stuff going on, we're like, dinner? We're like, yeah, dinner, but not my turn. Somebody else is in charge of that tonight, right? Like it's the finger on the nose, who's left. Decision fatigue's huge in my life. When you are often running herding cats, controlling chaos, decision fatigue becomes really real. So all of these things, though, for me, they kind of all boil down to the same thing. This is, mental, emotional, and sometimes physical energy that you're both lending and borrowing from other people. We tend to lend our strengths and borrow against our weakness, right? And it's my hope that you have balance in both your lending and borrowing. So our shelves impact like not just ourselves, but those around us, our families, our community, our industry, the world at large. And by understanding our shelves and what we hold close and what we share, what we discard, we gain a deeper understanding about our role and our impact to those around us. And then together, those shelves define society, right? Connection comes from shared experiences and seeing similar things on each other's shelves, right? Change comes from what I'm calling shelf collision. When your shelf looks different than mine, we can start to challenge each other's assumptions. And if lucky, we arrive at common ground. And maybe we don't, but hopefully, we've learned something along the way. The Diana theme this year, as mentioned earlier, right? It's securing our future together. And if I can just translate that just a tiny bit differently as and apply it to this talk, it's that we need to be responsible for our shelves. We shape the spaces we enter when we come together, right? We're responsible for what we bring to that space. And we shape the spaces we enter and the future we build together. It's on us to check our shelves and to check ourselves, right? There's my big pun. That's my big mic drop, okay? And that's it, guys. Thanks. And that was 45 minutes. I told you I'd nail it. So now it's 15 minutes until track 1, I believe, or approximately. Yeah, 15 minutes. Track 1, 2, and 3 are in the other rooms. And